So what do you think happens when you die? Like at the moment that we die, what do you think happens? I know this is like a far out question, but hang in there. We're going to dive into this a little bit. So I'm going to be approaching this topic from a Christian worldview. And just so you know, even within Christianity, this can be a controversial topic. I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm not saying I have it all figured out. I'm just saying let's look at the Bible. Let's speculate. Let's try to see what conclusions we arrive at together. So let me start by asking you a question. Where have you formed or based your opinions on heaven and hell or the afterlife on? Especially if you grew up Christian, like where did you base those opinions on? And the question includes, I guess, a sub-question, which is, were they on the Bible or was it on just something that you just always assumed? I know for me, I just always thought it was like going to be, heaven equals clouds, hell equals fire. And that's what I saw in all the movies. And I guess Dante's Inferno confirmed these thoughts. But I want to take a look at what the Bible has to say. It might say that. It might say something different. So let's go on this hunt together. So to start off, just to clarify a few things, there are some aspects of the afterlife that aren't really up for debate. One of those is that there is no reincarnation. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 7 through 8 says, just as people are destined to die once and after that to face judgment, so Christ was sacrificed once to take away the sins of many. So it's clear people die once, face judgment. We also know that there's only two options in the long run, and that's heaven or hell. Matthew 7:13 through 14, it talks about entering through a narrow gate or entering through a wide gate. So as we look at some other aspects, I just want to encourage you to reserve judgment, understand that we're speculating. We haven't been to the afterlife. We don't know for sure, but we have some scriptures that can help guide us and be our compass, as it should in anything. So I'm going to throw this controversial thought out there. It's possible that no one is in heaven yet, or hell for that matter. In John chapter 14, verse 3, it says, and I go to prepare a place for you. I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. So we see that going to heaven is contingent upon Jesus' return. Interesting, in John chapter 3, verse 13, it says, no one has ascended into heaven except he who descended from heaven, the Son of Man. That's interesting. No one has ascended into heaven. Those are the words of Jesus. And just think about this logically for a second. If people are already in their final destination place, then what would be the purpose of a judgment day? Matthew 25, verse 31 and 32 says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. So if people don't go immediately to heaven or hell, where do they go? In Luke 16:23, we see the story of the rich man and Lazarus. And it says, and in Hades, being in torment, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side. So at the point of death, there is a place we go, and there's a bad place, because he's not liking it. There's torment there, right? But in Luke 23:43, it says that Jesus answered him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. And this is his comment to the thief on the cross. So he's saying that today, that day, when they die, this thief on the cross is going to be saved. He's going to be with him in paradise. That seems awesome, right? So we've established there's a good place you can go. There's a bad place you can go. But in the previous video, we also talked about that, well, the judgment day hasn't come yet. So what's the point of judgment day if people are already in heaven or in hell, right? This idea that there exists a holding place that has a good part of it, which could be considered paradise, and has a bad side of it, which could be considered Sheol. And that judgment is sealed when we die, but we are not yet in heaven or hell. That doesn't happen until judgment day comes and we are resurrected and we receive this declarative judgment. So I'm going to throw this out there. Don't get all visceral, breathe. But it's possible that hell is not eternal. It's possible that hell is not eternal. So stick with me. There is a heaven, there is a hell, right? And we only go to one of two places in the long run. And if you've watched some of these previous parts, we talk about that process of getting to one or the other. So I want to read a couple of scriptures that suggest that it's possible that hell is not eternal, but that heaven is eternal. There's this way of thinking that we've just kind of taken for granted, and we've always assumed that the soul is immortal, it lives forever, and so it has to live forever either in heaven or hell. But where do we get this notion that our soul is eternal or it's immortal? It's not a biblical concept. It's something that philosophers over the ages have discussed, and eventually it became more mainstream. All right, so I'm going to read a couple passages suggesting that possibly hell is not forever. Matthew 7:13, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction. Okay, so it's mentioning destruction. I didn't read that leads to eternal torment. It says destroyed. So is it possible that our souls are maybe destroyed in hell? Perhaps there is some sort of punishment, but then at some point in time, our soul is destroyed. Matthew chapter 10, verse 28 says, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. So you can have soul and body destroyed in hell, getting to a place of no consciousness. You cease to exist. Now check this out. In Revelation chapter 20, 14 through 15, it says, then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is the second death. Anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. So there's this idea that hell is even just itself is destroyed. I've come to believe that this is a reasonable biblical view of hell, that it's not eternal, and that it involves the destruction of our soul eventually. Still not a place I want to go, but definitely a possibility.